Let's move on to main topic number 3, shall we? And our third main topic today gets submitted to us by Drew Larson. And Drew Larson writes the following. Hey, John, I don't know if you're aware. Oh dear, what's coming when somebody says that? I don't know if you're aware, but an audio clip just leaked from the set of Mission Impossible 7. And in it, Tom Cruise berates crew members for not following the safety protocols that have been instituted on all major Hollywood productions. Cruise obviously gets very emotional, talking about the state of the industry and how people are losing their homes and so on. And I personally believe he was justified in his tone. What do you think? Do you believe his outrage was justified? Thanks, and may the movie theaters live on. Okay, man, thanks for sending that in. And yeah, this one came in like a hot fastball over home plate yesterday. This was, I looked at my news feed 1 minute, nothing really interesting on it yesterday. Opened it about 10 minutes later. Everything was all about Tom Cruise having some kind of a meltdown. Some people talking about how great it was. Some people talking about how disgusted they were at Tom Cruise for having this meltdown. Let's set the table for this a little bit, shall we? So, understanding the context. Tom Cruise is right now, and has for a while, been trying to get Mission Impossible 7 put together. They have been derailed twice. One just because of the mass COVID shutdown, but then specifically in October, their production got shut down again because a couple of members on the crew got hit with the virus, and they had to shut down again, costing them hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, time, man hours, scheduling, everything, and it has a kind of a ripple effect. Fast forward now to this week. Apparently, they have a lot of very, very strict rules on set about their safety COVID protocols that they expect everybody to follow. Crews found a couple of guys not following the protocols. They were gathered around a particular monitor. They weren't observing the distance or when they were supposed to be there. Apparently, there weren't masks being removed. Several violations of their protocols. This is a movie that had already had to have been shut down once. And Tom Cruise went off on them, like just screamed at them. And here's what was, they got him on tape. He says this, "If I see you do it again, you are fucking gone. We are the gold standard. They're back there in Hollywood making movies right now because of us, because they believe in us and what we're doing. I'm on the phone with every fucking studio at night, insurance companies, producers, and they're looking at us and using us to make their movies. We are creating thousands of jobs, you motherfuckers. I don't ever want to see it again, ever. I don't want your apologies. You can tell it to the people who are losing their fucking homes because our industry is shut down. It's not going to put food on their table or pay for their college education. That's what I sleep with every night. The future of this fucking industry. So I'm sorry. I am beyond your apologies. I have told you and now I want it. And if you don't do it, you're out. We are not shutting this fucking movie down. Is it understood? If I see it again, you are fucking gone." And that is Tom Cruise going off on guys about their thing. Now, as when any celebrity goes off on something, there is often differing opinions. A lot of people saying, "How dare Tom Cruise? You don't have the right to talk to people like that," and blah, blah, blah. On the other hand, hey, dude, you're the producer of a movie and you are seeing things that are going to cost, you're paying these people and they're doing something that's going to cost you and everybody else millions of dollars if things go south because they're breaking the rules and all that kind of stuff. Where do I fall on this? Absolutely, Tom Cruise was justified in screaming at them. First of all, can I just say this? And this isn't a generational thing, because people in my own generation have been like this for a long time, okay? People in my own generation have been like this for a long time. In the real world, kiddies, when you screw up, someone's going to yell at you. Grow the fuck up and deal with it. I just, seriously, it is so amazing to me. He said, he yelled at me and hurt my feelings. Grow the fuck up. And again, this isn't a generation thing. My generation is like this. And the generation before mine was kind of like this. It wasn't since like my dad's generation that they actually wore their big boy and big girl pants. It's like, and they understood, you screw up in your job, where people could actually get fired or the company could lose millions or whatever, guess what? You're going to get yelled at. Instead of going off and crying about it, you should crawl off and go, oh my God, thank God they didn't fire me. Woo!
Yes.
Thank God they didn't fire me. Rob, the first law firm I ever worked in, I loved my boss. I loved him. And he was a great boss. But I remember the first time I screwed up, we were working in real estate law, and I made a dumb mistake, like a dumb mistake. And that could have, if my boss that I was interning under, if he didn't catch it, if he didn't catch my mistake, literally could have cost him thousands of dollars. And oh my God, he came into my office and he just, blah, 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 pay attention to what you're doing, blah. And guess what? I never did it again. I made other mistakes, but I never made that mistake again.
Yeah.
And I still love him to this day. The problem with people is that everybody only thinks about themselves. They don't think beyond themselves. And listen, I'm sure the two guys, like Cruz, I'm going to make a wild assumption here. Cruz probably appreciates these guys he was talking to because he didn't just fire them on the spot. And it sounds like it wasn't the first time he warned them. So I'm guessing he probably, I'm going to assume the best and assume that these guys weren't thinking, F the man, we're going to break the rules. They just probably weren't thinking about it. But that's the problem. We got so many people out there that don't think about how do my actions affect other people? How could what I do and the choices I make have potentially catastrophic ramifications on other people, let alone the people who are gracious enough to employ me and pay me to be here? And they just don't think about it. And I gotta say, I often find Tom Cruise to be a few marshmallows short of a s'mores. Granted, I am still a big fan of his as a talent, and I so respect when he's talking about, listen, you freaking idiots. There are people in this industry who are losing their homes. They're losing their healthcare coverage. They're not being able to pay their bills because our industry has been shut down. And we are supposed to be the example of how the industry can get back up on its feet and create work and create employment and all this kind of stuff. And I've got insurance companies calling me and I've got producers calling me and Hollywood calling me, and they're all relying on us to show the way that this can all be done. And we've already been shut down before because of this nonsense. And you are putting all of us at risk. When you break our rules, you are putting all of us at risk. That means you're putting that guy's job on the line. You're putting that girl's job on the line. You're putting the people who are paying for our movie to be here. You're putting millions of their dollars on the line, and you don't seem to give a fuck. And I got to tell you, I so respect what he said. And I extra respect the fact that he didn't just fire their asses on the spot, because it was clear from what he said that this wasn't the first time they violated the rules. And so I think he showed incredible patience, but I think he wanted to drive it home. We're not playing around with this. You are putting other people's livelihoods on the line, let alone their lives, because we're talking about a pandemic. But you're in the immediate, you're putting people's livelihoods on the line. We have rules here. We need to follow them. And it's not just our movie, it's the industry as a whole that we're trying to get back on its feet. So shape up. And if these guys are anything like me, when my lawyer came in the first time and gave me a bellowing, hopefully they'll never make that same mistake. A bellowing, massive bellowing. Then I never made that mistake again, and hopefully they won't either. So I get that there are some very fragile little pieces of tinfoil out there that are like, you can't treat people like that. You can't yell. Be grateful it was only yelling and not firing. I mean, I just grow the hell up. I love what Tom Cruise said. I think he was right on the money with it. And at the same time, I thought he was very gracious and showed great patience with them, letting them keep their jobs, despite the fact that they clearly broke the rules. Anyway, Rob, that is my feelings about this. What did you think about this whole Tom Cruise situation?
Well, first of all, 100%. I mean, as if anyone has ever yelled on a movie set before. I mean, give me a break.
Oh, yeah, it's a daily thing.
I mean, I read a lot of responses on social media on my feed. People are like, well, you just can't talk to people that way. I'm like, what planet do you live on? You know, back on September 27th, we had 267 people die of COVID in the United States. The last week, we've had 3,000 people die a day. They've locked down countries all over the world, whether it's London, whether it's Germany now, again, because this outbreak has not been contained. And somehow, Mission Impossible, that's already been shut down once, has been able to continue working. And the thing is, the entertainment business, what people don't understand is every movie that gets made, John, is a business unto itself. It's its own LLC, and it can be responsible ultimately, not just for employing the people that work on the film, but local hires, people that bring in food, caterers. A movie is an ecosystem of employment for people. And Tom Cruise was protecting that. He wasn't saying, I want this, I want that. He was speaking about other people. He's ranting about other people's livelihoods and other people's safety and keeping the business going. As we know, our business, or the entertainment business, is in a precarious fashion. And I think, put whatever feelings you have about Tom Cruise aside. Forget what you know of him. This particular rant, if you take it at face value, and I do, he was protecting his crew and protecting his business. It wasn't even about him necessarily personally, because it's always for him about the job. And I respect that.
Yeah, I just don't know this whole attitude that a lot of people have of, I am a precious little princess and you should treat me as such. No, guess what? In the real world, when you massively screw up and you break rules and you put other people's livelihoods on the line, be grateful if all you get is yelled at, and you deserve to be yelled at. And getting yelled at is good for character, depending. I mean, look, there's a fine line between constant verbal abuse and getting reamed out for a massive screw up, and especially if it was a multiple time offense. So I am 100% on board with what Tom Cruise did here. Absolutely. Again, I will sometimes question his sanity a little bit, yes, but in this particular instance, I think he was more than justified. I think he should be applauded for this. And if it takes something like this to get people on that set to realize, oh yeah, there are rules. Like, what would you rather have had? People who endorse let's treat everybody like a precious little princess. What would have been better for Tom Cruise to do? Walk up calmly to them and say, guys, go pack up your stuff. Your services here are no longer required. We have rules. You know the rules. We've made them very clear, and you broke them. Please empty out your locker, and please, you'll be escorted off. Would that be better? Or to come and say, guys, what the freaking F? You're putting people's jobs on the line. You are costing people. You are risking other people's livelihoods. Don't do it again. What do you think those guys would have preferred to hear? I think they would have preferred to get reamed out and keep their jobs than have him quietly, which he would have been completely justified. If you break those types of rules and you put the entire production at risk, he would have been totally justified to go up to them and say, guys, please pack your things and leave. And then they don't get a paycheck. So I don't know.
And, from a monetary situation, I don't think people understand on large movies when they're shooting, you're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars a day that are spent. And if they were to shut down, there's insurance people that are called in. There's massive amounts of money that are lost. And the local hires, the caterers, those people suddenly don't have their jobs for weeks right before Christmas. There's so much at stake here, and people don't get it because, John, the motion picture business is only a bunch of Hollywood elites, so who cares?
Yeah. And here's the thing, Rob. I'm seeing a lot of people trying to equate this situation with the Christian Bale one that happened a number of years ago.
Totally different thing.
And I am a big fan of Christian Bale. I am. But that was a completely different situation. That was Christian Bale because somebody just happened to be doing something he didn't like. And you know what? We all have a bad day, right? We all have a bad day that we wish we could take back. All of us do. Clearly, Bale was having one of those days. He was having a bad day probably. Somebody did something. I think it was one of the ADs or something like that in the background. Did something that he didn't like off in the background, and he just went off and flipped off on. That's a totally different thing from the producer of the movie, Tom Cruise.
It was actually the director of photography.
Yeah, the DP. Thank you.
Lights.
That's what it was. And it's a totally different situation than the producer of the film, Tom Cruise, seeing people violating health regulations on a movie that's already been shut down twice for those things, and they're trying to keep the company alive and trying to keep the business alive and trying to keep the industry alive. It's a totally different situation. You can't equate those two things in the least. But anyway, that's just my take on it. Question is, guys, what did you think about Tom Cruise's meltdown rant on that? I thought it was completely justified when you understand the stakes that were on the line and all that kind of stuff. And by the way, again, Rob, you said it earlier. You're 100% right. You've never been on a movie set if you don't think directors and producers yell. But this was completely justified, in my opinion. What do you guys think? Jump down into the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys.